Hey, buddy, watch this.
Yeah, you better believe we're going to talk about Plot Twist in this video. And no, I don't really think it's a 1-star card right now. That's just for dramatic effect there in the intro. But these are the most disappointing cards in Rise of Shadows so far. And what I mean by that are cards that were rated highly by both myself and the community before the expansion came out, but in reality aren't seeing all that much play right now. Now, I just want to say, on the most part, people really did guess Rise of Shadows cards pretty well or rate them well. In particular, just because there are so many cards being played in the meta right now. This expansion is very influential, so not that many cards have fallen short of expectations just because most cards are being played. Beyond that, just because the cards in this video, I'm not saying it's like forever going to be bad, just that at the moment it's not really seeing that competitive level of play that might have been expected based on the ratings before the expansion. I'm not dooming these cards. In fact, I think some of them are still pretty good and will eventually see some play. All that said, let's go ahead and jump into this list. So yeah, let's just get right into it. Up first here is Plot Twist, a card which the community gave 3.91 stars. I only came in at 2 stars on this one, so I think probably the only card in this video that I actually got right. I did not overrate this one, and in fact came out pretty famously against it. Got a fair bit of backlash right here on this very YouTube channel for saying that. It turns out changing your hand into a new hand really isn't all that good, because on average, you're changing from an average hand to an average hand, and very rarely are you finding enough cool new things or better things with that new hand to make Plot Twist just good in and of itself. So not a lot of decks are able to use this successfully. And there are some cards out there that are having these on-draw effects, things like Fellord Betrug, Aranasi Broodmother, which do hint towards this, cycle or draw sort of deck style. And if enough of those cards come out, then I do think Plot Twist could get over the hump and might make sense if you're turning your draws into value somehow. As it stands right now, there's just not enough of that package for Plot Twist to come together. So at the moment, it has remained pretty disappointing. I don't have a whole lot of hope for this card in the future, but, if those things show up, Plot Twist might actually get there and, meet some of the expectations set by a lot of people out there in the community. For now, it's just not. The deck win rates on this are terrible. The played win rates certainly don't look good either. So Plot Twist is not powering any sort of relevant meta deck right now. And I don't see that changing in Rise of Shadows. It might take a little while for this card to see play if it ever does, but right now it remains a disappointment. So now let's move on to Potion Vendor, a card which the community gave 3.69 stars. So, better than 3, getting closer to 4 if we're rounding up here on the Potion Vendor. I gave this one 4 stars myself. I actually really thought Potion Vendor made a ton of sense. If you just look at this battle cry, there's a lot of power packed into it for a 1-drop. That's a big heal effect. And we've seen some strong heal synergy stuff happen in the past. And 1-drops have been good in this expansion too, but nonetheless, Potion Vendor's just not working. And I even tried to make it work in like heal-based, magic carpet decks myself across a couple of different classes, and it still just didn't feel all that impactful. So as far as I can tell right now, Potion Vendor just doesn't look like that good of a card. The body perhaps just a little bit too weak for this heal upside to really be relevant. I still hold out a glimmer of hope that it might get there someday, but certainly for now, it does not look like it's going to be a meta-relevant card anytime soon. Apparently, some people out there in the community thought it was also going to be strong. This one falls a little bit more on me because I really did think this was going to be a fantastic card. The community thought it was going to be pretty good, but it turns out right now just not seeing any kind of play at all in the Hearthstone meta, so falling far short of my expectations and standing as a really big disappointment for me right now. Moving on here, we have Desperate Measures for Paladin, a card the community liked pretty well at 3.78, getting very close to that 4-star threshold. But it's certainly not been a 4-star card so far. It's not even being played right now in the only versions of Secret Paladin that are out there. There's this sort of popular Secret Mech Paladin. It's a solid tier 2 deck. It's not running Desperate Measures. So if a build of Secret Paladin with all these Secret Paladin support cards isn't running Desperate Measures, I think you have to consider it a disappointment. Now, I actually did come in at 2 stars on this card. I'm surprised. I kind of thought I would have liked it a little bit better, but I guess I kind of nailed it accidentally. The modern version of me, the current version of me, is surprised that the past version of me got this one right. It turns out, random secrets just aren't that good. And when you're building that secret deck, it turns out you just need a few secrets really to get things moving in the early game. Then you're shifting into that kind of mech package, the mid-range package, because that's really where the power level comes. And the secrets are just to make sure that you don't fall behind too much in the early game. And it turns out random secrets just aren't that good, even if you get 2 of them into a single card draw. And, particularly because they don't always synergize with like Commander Risa, that can be tough because you don't know what you get, and it may not be a secret that works well with her. So refining that secret package down some can help. Beyond that, this doesn't work with on-play effects like with Secret Keeper, for instance, where you're getting a buff on your Secret Keeper. So there's some anti-synergies there, although Secret Keeper's not even that popular anymore. So all that said, this card's clearly not making the cut if it's not making the cut in a secret deck. Maybe there'll be some Prince Liam thing out there later that turns this into something valuable. But for now, obviously a disappointment if the one deck that you'd expect to run it isn't running it. Desperate Measures just isn't making the cut. So now let's move on to Crystal Stag for Druid, a card I gave 4 stars. Community gave this one 3.72. So clearly we both thought this was going to be pretty playable card, and there was this little heal package coming together for Druid with Loosened Bark and some of the new things like Crystal Power. But as we've seen, that has not taken off at all. Druid is dominated by Token Druid, and I really have never found one good heal Druid list. Some of you out there will point me to this random list here or this random list there, and yes, I've seen those too, but it's clearly not anything that's making this big impact on the meta. And it turns out because of the requirements for Crystal Stag, it's actually kind of hard to get this off on time in a sensible fashion. You got to take damage, you got to have the heal there, you got to have Crystal Stag, and more importantly, perhaps you got to have a deck that supports all of those different pieces. So Crystal Stag just not seeing play. Now, I have played this card. It's very good when you play it. It feels fantastic to get 2 4/4s with Rush. Like, that's a fantastic play for 5 mana. But it's all those conditional aspects and the context and the environment that I think is holding Crystal Stag back. So definitely a card I still have hope for. If a heal Druid package ever comes together, this could obviously be an influential part of that and a very impactful card. But for now, because that doesn't exist, that means Crystal Stag is a disappointment. It's not living up to my expectations. At 4 stars, it's not matching the communities either. So definitely a card to keep an eye on, but for now, one that has fallen short. And then finally here I have the lone legendary card in this video, Geppetto Joybuzz, a card which I gave 4 stars, and so did the community basically. It is a card that we've seen a little bit in the meta with things like Malagos Hunter. There are a couple other things like some Malagos Druids and some random OTK or combo decks out there running Geppetto Joybuzz. So it's not like this card is hopeless, but it definitely isn't defining or really a part of a popular meta deck right now. So I think if we're all considering it a 4-star card, that means it's a disappointment because 4-star cards are obviously impactful. They're obviously being played in meta decks, and Geppetto Joybuzz is certainly not in those environments. And in fact, I think maybe there's been a bit of a shift away from OTK decks in general in Hearthstone, or these big combo decks. We still have a lot of burst damage with Tempo Rogue, and we have a couple Mechathune decks out there on the fringes of the meta. But in the past, really the meta has been dominated by OTK decks. Just expansion ago or 2 expansions ago, it felt like OTK was everywhere. And I think probably that expectation ranked Geppetto Joybuzz a little bit higher in all of our minds, like, oh, imagine all the OTKs, imagine all the combos. As we've moved away from that style of play a little bit, Geppetto probably lost some power along the way. Now, again, I do think there will eventually be some OTK deck that works perfectly with Geppetto and slots itself into the meta. So by no means am I giving up hope on this card, but for now, if you look at this card's play rate today, if you consider its significance in the meta, it is absolutely not a 4-star card. It's feeling more like a 2-star card, and for that reason, it is a disappointment. And there you go, folks. Those are the 5 most disappointing cards in Rise of Shadows. If I'm going to be totally honest with you, I don't think any of those were that disappointing. When you look at all the cards and many of the legendaries from this set, like, most of the things we expected to be good were actually pretty good. Because Rise of Shadows is so influential in the meta right now, it's like the dominant expansion at the moment and the dominant card set. It turns out a lot of the cards are just being played, and when a lot of the cards are being played, you're less likely to miss on some of these. So disappointing cards right now, overrated cards, there just weren't that many. I had to kind of stretch to find these in the first place, and some of these you probably won't even think are all that disappointing, which maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a great sign for Hearthstone, that perhaps that's a sign of a balanced meta, and that's a good thing in my mind. So that said, if you guys have any other cards that really disappointed you, that didn't live up to your expectations, of course, feel free to share those in the comments below. If you found a way to make one of these cards work really well in a deck and it's the next superstar deck of the meta, well, share that in the comments below too. We want to hear about it. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, game on.